Hello and welcome to Nothing But the Truth. How does the Congress respond to Natwar Singh's astonishing accusations and allegations about Sonia Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi? And how much damage has he done to the two Gandhis? Those are the two key issues I shall explore today with Congress MP, former minister and a staunch loyalist of the Gandhi family, Manishankar Iyer. Mr. Iyer, let's start with what Natwar Singh has said about Sonia Gandhi. Later on, I'll come to his revelations about Rajiv Gandhi. Now, he says that Sonia Gandhi refused to become in 2004, not because her inner voice had told her not to take up the job as she claimed at the time, but because her son Rahul was scared she would be killed. As Natwar Singh puts it, Rahul said he was prepared to take any possible step to prevent his mother from taking up the prime ministership. He gave his mother 24 hours to decide. Would you accept this is a devastating disclosure that radically alters the way we regard her decision not to take up the PM's job?
Not at all. First, he nowhere says that she did not consult her conscience. That is an imputation that you have made deriving from the point on which he's stressing. Natwar also said in his interview to you that he's not only putting facts together, he's putting the truth, and that he is therefore a servant of the truth. But a servant of the truth knows that the truth is like a kaleidoscope. It depends upon the perspective from which you see it. And while there is no denying, and I'm amazed that anybody should question that a son who's seen his father and his grandmother being killed should be concerned about his mother being killed, and recalling that Sonia herself has said that when Rajiv was asked to become the Prime Minister, she had said to him, please don't, because we'll all get killed. And Rajiv replied, in any case we are all going to be killed. I don't think there is anything odd about that. At the same time, it doesn't exclude a number of other inputs and a number of other perspectives.
Can I interrupt and pick up on three things that emerged from your answer? First of all, you clearly aren't questioning the veracity of what Natwar Singh has said.
No, I did not question it. I said that there is one point, and I explained what that point would be, and I said that does not exclude other factors or other perspectives.
So you differ with the line taken by many of your party spokesmen that this is manufactured and fabricated and it's untrue. You differ with that line?
Well, you know, I'm not a Congress spokesman, and although I am in the Congress, I'm hardly likely to be asked to defend the Congress. So I'm here in my individual capacity, and if other congressmen have questioned the veracity of this, well, your question should be directed to
Now,
them.
the second thing that emerges from your answer is that, in fact, Sonia's decision up till now to refuse the prime ministership had been widely viewed as an act of noble renunciation. It emerges, in fact, that it was nothing but a response to her son's fear she would be killed. It wasn't sacrifice, it was probably self-preservation.
It emerges from your question that she said any of this. She never said any of this. If others chose to say it, your question should be addressed to them. Her only comment on it was that she had searched or asked her conscience, and therefore there may be many, many more angles to this than simply the one that Natwar Singh has put forward.
The other thing that emerges from your answer is that when in fact she stood up in the Central Hall of Parliament and said she wasn't going to take the job because her inner voice had told her it would be wrong to do so, she was probably coming up with an artful cover for what was the truth being her son's fear she'd be killed.
Not at all. The history of the inner voice in the Congress goes back to Gandhiji, and I'm absolutely sure that she must have ruminated on this issue, including the consideration put forward by her son, before she said, and all that she said was that I consulted my inner conscience. Don't you consult your inner conscience?
You know, you said something very important, and you reiterated as well under questioning that you accept the veracity of what Natwar Singh is saying. Now, what is strange is why did Sonia Gandhi make such a desperate effort to stop Natwar Singh publishing what is at the end of the day a pretty harmless and by no means earth-shattering revelation? Why was she so desperate to stop it being published?
How would I know? How would I know? I mean, the question assumes that I am the ultimate insider, as Natwar Singh likes to portray himself.
The question assumes that you're an intelligent man, and I'll come now to why I'm asking the question. People say that she made this desperate effort to stop a pretty meaningless, valueless revelation because actually she was worried Natwar had something far more serious and damning that he could reveal. She wasn't sure whether he would reveal it. She went there to ensure he didn't. And just let me finish, He didn't. But by being so desperate to ensure he didn't, she's made it clear she's got skeletons rattling in her cupboard.
There are only 1.5 pages that are devoted of 320 to this, and you and your colleagues in the media have pumped up your own TRP ratings by picking that up and spinning stories around.
Well, that's a very convenient explanation. I'll give you the right to rubbish the media on those grounds. But
I'm not rubbishing the media, I'm rubbishing you.
You're perfectly right to do so. I invited you in a sense to give you that opportunity. Fine. But let me put this to you. She didn't just call on Natwar Singh on the 7th of May. That wasn't simply preceded by telephone calls from Suman Dubey, a close friend of hers, with probably the same motive in mind. At that meeting on the 7th of May, she did 3 things which draw attention. Number 1, she embraced a man she'd cut off for 8 years. Number 2, she apologized to him for the way she treated him. Number 3, she said, you are my closest friend, that I have made confidences in you that I haven't made with either Rahul or Priyanka. Now that is a sign of a woman being desperate to ensure something Natwar knows isn't told. What is that something that she's worried about? It clearly can't be the innocuous Rahul story.
It just shows that Sonia Gandhi is not exclusively that kind of a person as Natwar portrays her to be, particularly in his epilogue.
All right, but many people, and I'll put this to you, many people who are senior editors, Shekhar Gupta for one, Siddharth Varadarajan for another, have publicly raised the question, was there something more damning that Natwar could have revealed, didn't reveal, but her desperation now shows she has clearly fears and skeletons rattling in the cupboard. Many people have noted that.
What else is the work of a senior editor? Is to go on speculating like this. And you're welcome to speculate whatever you want. But just like Natwar, I can only tell the truth as I see it. And the truth as I see it is that she thought of this issue. That's what she meant by consulting her inner voice. She did it in a tradition that is at least 100 years old in the Congress party, and she arrived at the right conclusion.
All right, let's move on. A second revelation that emerges from Natwar Singh's book and his interview is that in fact Sonia Gandhi, within days of the death of her husband, was playing a critical role in taking decisions for the Congress party. She was asked who should be the new Congress president. Her first choice was Shankar Dayal Sharma, then the vice president. When he declined, her second choice was P.V. Narasimha Rao. Now before I go further, let me ask, do you accept the truth of this revelation?
I'm not at all surprised, and I don't think it detracts from the fact that she was in a terrible state. And at that time, I had an interaction with her about changing the name of the Jawaharlal Nehru Foundation into the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, and she backed me on my suggestion that the institute within it should be called the Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Contemporary Studies. That doesn't mean that she was not deeply in mourning.
I'm not questioning her state of mind or the fact that she was deeply, as you put it, deeply in mourning. I'm not questioning that at all. What I'm saying is this, that up till now the impression and image that we had that she was a shy, retiring, non-political widow who wanted nothing to do with politics whatsoever is actually untrue. She was in fact, although not in public view, from behind taking critical decisions for the Congress party. She was fully involved in a political process, and this image of being shy and retiring and non-political is untrue.
I think she was always concerned about the Congress party, always concerned about its continuity, and there have been any number of people coming up to her and asking her for her view on this issue.
Except that the world didn't know this. In the immediate days after Rajiv's death, we thought she was non-political, shy and retiring, and clearly she wasn't.
Does the world know everything about you?
Well, that may be true, except for the fact that what you're confirming is that the impression the world had, which the world believed was the truth, was false and wrong.
No, quite the contrary. I said she was concerned about the Congress, its legacy and its future, which is not the same thing as saying that she was actually actively involved in politics.
Except for the fact
she kept herself out until 1968.
Except even in deep mourning, literally days after her husband's tragic assassination, she was helping the Congress decide who should be president.
I see no contradiction.
That's a very political role.
I see no contradiction. It's part and parcel of the process of mourning that you involve yourself, especially when you're asked, with who and how the legacy of the Congress.
All right, let's leave this for the audience to judge. All I'll underline is that most people's conventional idea of mourning is that you don't get involved in choosing the new Congress president. It's something most people would not want to do.
Because most people are not the wife of the Congress Prime Minister.
Possibly, you may be right. Let me put this to you. Now, there is a third revelation, and in fact, it's not a revelation, it's a confirmation that Sonia Gandhi was actually being shown secret government files, that they were brought to her by Pulok Chatterjee, and Natwar Singh says several ministers in government knew this to be a fact.
He was I want to know, you failed to ask him this question, so let me now ask it to him through you. Did he show any of his files? Which is the ministry in the government of India that has the largest number of secret files? It is the Ministry of External Affairs. And when she mentioned that business about African defense deals to him, he said, have you seen the file? Now this clearly shows that she was not in the habit of looking at files. And if you're in the position in which she is, look, I've been a minister, you haven't. I've seen piles and piles of files coming to my home. It's a very time-consuming exercise. So I don't think the Congress president needed to look at any files. She would have been told the substance of a policy decision that is on the verge of being taken.
Manishankar Iyer, nothing that you said can deny or contradict Natwar Singh's claim that Pulak Chatterjee was taking files. He may not have shown files himself. You, as a minister, may not have shown files yourself. He's not saying he did either. He's saying Pulak Chatterjee took them.
Did you ask him whether he gave any files to Pulak Chatterjee to take?
But the Prime Minister's office. The Prime Minister's office. Pulak Chatterjee was working there. He could have taken them.
Which has the largest number of secret files, I say this as a former Indian Foreign Service officer, is the Ministry of External Affairs.
Yes, but that's not the question being asked. That's not the issue that's being questioned. The issue that's being questioned is, did Pulak Chatterjee take files from the Prime Minister's office? Natwar Singh clearly is saying he did. You're not in a position to contradict it.
All right, let him say that. Why are you asking me? I was a minister in 4 different ministries. None of my files
Can I tell you why I'm asking you?
Let me please finish. None of my files was ever asked for by Pulak Chatterjee, not taken from me, and I'd have been astonished if I were.
But when files from your ministry went to the PMO, Pulak Chatterjee would have access without asking you, and therefore at that stage they could have been taken. He didn't need your permission then.
In which case,
your look says that's true.
Also it is true that Pulak Chatterjee is an honorable man. He has taken the oath of secrecy.
Brutus was an honorable man, and you know that phrase better than me.
Yeah, but I don't see that Pulak Chatterjee is the one who stabbed Sonia Gandhi in the back.
Can I tell you why I'm raising this issue? Because what Natwar Singh has said after Sanjay Baru had half hinted at it in his book actually confirms something even worse. That a woman who hadn't taken the oath of secrecy, who wasn't even in government, had access to secret government files with the Prime Minister happy, and that amounts to at least a governmental impropriety, if not a constitutional impropriety. If it is true.
But I don't believe it's true.
But you take Natwar's word.
It's not based on my experience. Just because these two, this accidental media advisor, this joker Sanjay Baru, because he says it, and because this bitter human being, Natwar Singh, says it, it doesn't become the unvarnished
you know something
truth.
very interesting.
It just becomes a means of your increasing your trips rating.
Let me put this to you. You accepted his story when he said that Rahul was the reason she didn't take up the Prime Ministership. You accepted his story about the role she played in offering the Congress presidency to S.D. Sharma when none of us were aware of it. Those revelations you were happy to accept. Suddenly, because this is particularly embarrassing of the government as a whole, you don't want to believe him. You're choosing which to believe and which not to believe.
With regard to Rahul's not wanting his mother to become, that this is one of the elements. As regards her role in suggesting Shankar Dayal Sharma, I knew it. Shankar Dayal had told me himself.
In other words, that wasn't a fact. In fact, you're confirming once again what Natwar said. You're providing a second source of corroboration.
Yeah, but
that's okay.
Something that is well known within the party.
It wasn't well.
It's not something that renders him an icon of
just
truth.
A moment. It wasn't well known to the world outside the party, so I'm going to ask you a bit about that. What exactly did Shankar Dayal Sharma tell you? Can you tell me?
जैसे उन्होंने कहा कि मैं प्रधानमंत्री बनूं, लेकिन
उन्होंने कौन है? उन्होंने कौन है?
उन्होंने का मतलब सोनिया जी ने कि सोनिया जी का ने इशारा दिया कि मुझे प्रधानमंत्री बनना चाहिए, लेकिन मैंने उनसे कहा कि उम्र ज्यादा हो गया और सेहत भी ठीक नहीं है.
So this is complete confirmation of what Natwar Singh has said.
Absolutely. Right. But it's not a secret from me for all of us.
All right. Well, maybe
it may be a revelation for you, and you want to make a big story out of it. No. But I don't believe that just because there may be some facts, I'm using Natwar's language, there may be some facts in his book that it constitutes the unvarnished
Let's
truth.
not argue over this. It may not be new. I'll tell you why.
That's the point you're trying to make.
It may not be new to you. It may not be new to party men who are in the know, but it is new to the world, and the world has the right to know. And you now have done a service. You've corroborated something that Natwar first said.
I've corroborated a fact.
Okay.
I have not corroborated everything.
I'm glad you called it a fact. I'm glad you call it a fact. It underlines the point. Let's move on. Natwar Singh says of Sonia Gandhi's hold over the Congress party that it was firmer and more durable than even that of Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi. He says that as a result, she was an authoritarian and stern leader.
First, I'm in no position to compare because I was a very young man when Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister, and I was mostly out of the country when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister. So I am in no position to compare.
But is Sonia authoritarian?
But the last words that you used, I think those are extremely unfair. Yes, she has a strong control over the party. But what else do you expect of a president?
So she's not authoritarian?
I don't think at all she's authoritarian. She's very democratic.
Is she stern?
I have sat in on some meetings, not the million meetings that Natwar has had, but especially when I was a little bit in favor, I have been in those. And she listens with the utmost care to what everybody else has to say.
So you reject the claim she's authoritarian and stern?
She's not authoritarian and she's sometimes stern, but don't you think any leader ought to be sometimes stern?
May well be. I'm not actually questioning, I'm simply asking your opinion. Let me now...
Yeah, but what about, if you say that she's sometimes stern, the other part of that story is that she's many times not stern. How can you just use one word for her?
That's Natwar that is under question.
You're picking it up, naturally you
would.
Of
her style of functioning,
yes.
Natwar Singh says that she's obsessively secretive and suspicious. Under her, dissent is smothered, free discussion fenced in, and then he adds, she intimidates people.
What rubbish. I have been in so many meetings where people argue with each other, and I have had my serious differences with Dr. Manmohan Singh over economic policy long before he became Prime Minister. And she's allowed us to express our different points of view in her presence. So I don't think she's at all authoritarian.
Can I interrupt? It's very interesting the way you put it. You had a serious difference of opinion with the Prime Minister, yet Sonia Gandhi, who's not senior to the PM, allowed you to express that difference in front of her. Who's she to stop you doing anything when the PM's there? PM takes precedence over her.
I was referring to the first Antony Committee report, which was approximately 5 years before Manmohan Singh became the Prime Minister, but he had been a finance minister and he had his economic philosophy.
So she doesn't intimidate.
It just shows that if she allows debate to take place in front of her, then she is democratic in her processes and she's firm in her final decisions.
And you're saying, therefore, she's not intimidating?
She's certainly not intimidating.
So Natwar is talking bunkum when he claims this?
Well, if she may occasionally be intimidating, and some people with a guilty conscience might feel intimidated, but to describe her fundamental characteristic as being either authoritarian or intimidating is completely wrong.
My last question on Sonia Gandhi. Natwar Singh says of her personality that she's a prima donna, but he adds, very tellingly, that underneath it all she remains an ordinary and insecure person.
I think she is an ordinary person.
Is she insecure?
In an extraordinary position, and if she were to be strutting around like a peacock or a peahen, then I think it would be very wrong. Yes, there are bound to be in her, as in all human beings, an element of insecurity, which is what makes you have an open mind and listen to 10 different points of view.
But would you describe her as an insecure?
And in his book, he gives several examples of her changing her mind at his instance.
Oh, hang on a second. He also gives a dreadful example of her behavior with Kenneth Kaunda. He calls it capricious. Others would say it was downright rude. She said to a man who was a former president of Zambia, 22 years older than her, in fact, a colleague and friend of her mother-in-law, that he had to change a hotel room at night because she didn't like the hotel owner where he was staying. She sent Natwar twice to force him to change.
Yeah.
That is something only a very insecure person does, or a very capricious and arrogant person.
It's a person who may have very, very strong reasons. And I suspect, now I don't know the details of it, but I suspect that she had discovered the extraordinary misuse to which the name of herself, her husband, her party was being put by this individual, which is why she wanted to break relations.
The individual being Lalit Suri.
Who else could it be? It was his hotel.
But you don't believe and you don't accept that underneath it all she is an insecure person?
Not at all. She's a person who has some insecurities in her, which are what make her a human being.
In an exclusive interview with Congress MP, former minister and Gandhi family loyalist Manishankar Iyer. Mr. Iyer, let's come to what Natwar Singh says about Rajiv Gandhi. He says that the decision to commit Indian troops to Sri Lanka was taken at an afternoon reception at the President's Palace in Colombo without consulting his cabinet colleagues and without informing any senior official. To many people, this is proof that Rajiv Gandhi took a critical decision in a very casual and cavalier manner.
I heard you saying that and I wondered why you did, because in that book itself, the reason for a precipitate decision not a deployment, a precipitate deployment. The precipitate decision was that Jayawardene said there could be a coup even that evening. Therefore, whatever action was to be taken had either to be taken in a rush or not. In any case...
Can I interrupt?
In any case...
Can I interrupt? I'm not denying that, and Mr. Natwar Singh made that clear in the interview he gave me, but present at that reception were P.V. Narasimha Rao, a senior minister, although not foreign minister at the time. Present also was the Minister of State for External Affairs, Natwar Singh himself. He could have easily just reached across the garden and said, come and join me, what's your advice? He didn't. He did this unilaterally, he did it almost immediately, and I put it to you that it would have been better if he'd consulted and thought a bit.
May I put it to you that I was making a distinction between a decision and a process of deployment. I'm sure, as you said yourself, later in the same interview, that there had been preparation for seeing that in the event that our armed forces were required to go in, what would they do? Now that's the normal work that any army does.
Except that Natwar Singh contradicts you. Natwar Singh has gone on record to say that before he asked Rajiv what was happening, Rajiv said the troops have already left for Sri Lanka.
May I please tell you that Natwar Singh was an MOS at the time, i.e. not a member of the cabinet. So how does he know what was not discussed?
In other words, he doesn't know the full story.
Obviously, again and again, none of us, there's an old Indian story, since Natwar thinks he's so much of an Indian, which says that if there are blind people who are faced with an elephant, somebody will catch the tail and say it's a snake or a rope. Now this is what has happened. Natwar, please let me say this because I think it's very important. Natwar, as a student of history, knows that nobody takes autobiography as history. They take it as an element, an input into historiography.
That's your interpretation. Let's come back to the revelations Natwar Singh has made.
This is my definition of history.
Natwar Singh has one more example of how Rajiv Gandhi often was immature and sometimes even hasty. He says that the decision to forcibly airdrop humanitarian aid over the Jaffna Peninsula was taken, A, without fully considering the implications and consequences that would follow, and secondly, without realizing that it was imperative to A, inform President Jayawardene, and B, your own ambassador at the UN, where this matter could have blown up. And that wasn't happening until Natwar alerted Rajiv, and Rajiv suddenly said, oh, good idea, making it clear he hadn't thought of it.
What you neither asked nor he said was that notwithstanding Sri Lanka being in the Security Council, the issue was not raised.
Because Ghare Khan did such a good job in ensuring it wasn't raised. And that's because he was tipped off.
Please be fair to Rajiv. The issue was a side show because it was not raised by Sri Lanka. Secondly, it was what demonstrated to Jayawardene what we were capable of doing. And thirdly, may I say that I, as somebody who heard about this dropping this bombing with idlis and toshes of the Tamils in Sri Lanka, I asked myself, is this right? I mentioned my objection to everybody. But in the light of subsequent developments, especially that the Sri
Lankan... So you
had
doubts yourself at that time?
I did.
Yeah,
because I am a great believer in non-interference in other countries.
You saw this as potential violation of Sri Lanka's sovereign airspace.
Not a potential violation.
An actual violation.
A violation. And therefore I said it was wrong. But neither the Sri Lankan president nor did Bharat Tilakaratne get up and say, why are you invading my country?
Well, Bharat Tilakaratne, according to Natwar Singh, virtually collapsed when he heard the news. He put his hand in his hand.
He said that. He claims that. But he said nothing about it outside. On the contrary, I believe that at that point, Jayawardene was relieved that his having to look after the Tamil population was being shared or at least taken out of his...
In other words, Rajiv was fulfilling a Jayawardene wish without realizing it.
Well, maybe he'd even expressed it, I don't know.
All right. But the interesting thing to underline is that you, at that time, as a member of the PMO, had your own reservations and doubts and felt this was wrong.
And nobody else in PMO disagreed with me.
Something else that Natwar Singh reveals...
Yeah, please underline your favorite word. Underline for the visitor, for the viewers, that nobody else in PMO agreed with me. I was an eccentric, out of line.
No doubt, and you still are. And let me now bring to your attention a third revelation that Natwar Singh makes. He points out that Rajiv Gandhi had a naive faith and trust in Prabhakaran. He treated Prabhakaran almost as if he was an English gentleman at a club whose word was his bond. And Rajiv, as a result, was a credulous human being who virtually knowingly got taken for a ride by Prabhakaran.
Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. It was clear, please remember what went into Sri Lanka. It was not an invading army. It was a peacekeeping force. The IPKF stands for that. And it was asked for by the Sri Lankan government after our bombing.
But I'm talking about Prabhakaran.
I'm coming to that because it's connected. The things are not irrelevant one to the other. After our so-called air bombing of Idlis and Toshas, at that point, Jayawardene begs Rajiv Gandhi that to preserve the integrity of my country, please send in the, please send in a peacekeeping force. A peacekeeping force goes in there to protect the Tamils and the Elam fighters.
But come to Prabhakaran. Come to Prabhakaran.
I'm coming to them. If you don't take a background, then your questions will be worthy only of the so-called nothing but the truth. I am saying nothing but the truth. So please listen me out. At this point, it was to, after giving an assurance to Prabhakaran and offering him financial aid, that please go back there.
A bribe or financial aid?
You keep calling it a bribe. I think you got a sick mind.
Mani Dixit virtually said so to
He
Shyam Bhartia.
virtually said so. You keep repeating it. You're trying to poison the mind of your viewer that it was a bribe because you think it was.
Why are you getting so hot under the collar?
Because I am
Because
very
I'm suggesting
angry,
the truth and you don't like it.
Because I'm very angry at the way in which you twist your face and say it's a bribe. I mean, you're trying to cheat innocent people who don't know about it. It was not a bribe. The expression used was financial assistance, and there was nothing under.
Very rarely do people give a bribe and actually call it a bribe to someone's face.
We give financial assistance to Varadaraja Perumal.
Let's come back to the key point. Was Rajiv naive in trusting Prabhakaran?
Not at all. I think it was the right thing to do. It's just that this fellow, after it was, you asked General Calcutta, I don't know why you're not asking him on your program. He will tell you a lot of truths about this, and the shooting down, like in a duck shoot of our paratroopers, was the fault of the army. It was not the fault of the Prime Minister.
All right. Let me read to you Natwar Singh's conclusion and verdict both on the IPKF as well as the whole Sri Lanka adventure. He says, neither were the troops told about the geography of the Jaffna Peninsula nor about the LTTE hideouts. From the very beginning, the Sri Lanka ethnic episode was mishandled and ended as a complete failure. That's it.
Given by a man who shouldn't have given that verdict, because the fact of the matter was that it was not an Indian army going in for an invasion. It was a peacekeeping force.
But it still
and
failed.
They had all the information.
The point is, it still failed.
I don't think it failed. I think the one thing that kept Sri Lanka together, enabled, please listen to me, enabled the formulation and passage of the 13th Amendment and allowed us to continue having an influence over Sri Lanka was that. And since you've read his last lines, may I read out the last 2 or 3 lines of a very, very friendly, affectionate article that I wrote about Natwar before the book came out or was referred to. I said that let us see if his autobiography will vindicate him or not. I certainly hope it does. I'm afraid this autobiography has damaged him as nothing else could have damaged him.
One other thing that Natwar Singh reveals is about Operation Brass Tacks. He makes it absolutely clear that this was cooked up by then Minister of State for... let me finish the question. He makes it clear that this was cooked up by then Minister of State for Defence Arun Singh and the then Army Chief Krishnaswamy Sundarji, that Rajiv Gandhi had no knowledge of it and he was completely in the dark. Now I say that it's incredible that a Prime Minister should not know something, particularly when that Prime Minister is also his own Defence Minister, and yet he's in the dark.
Incredibly, both you and he and Natwar are making the mistake of not distinguishing between Operation Brass Tacks, which was an internal army maneuver, which the Defence Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, knew everything about, and the manner in which it was being aggressively pushed in the direction of the Pakistan border, and propaganda was being propagated about Pakistani army reactions to this, while Rajiv Gandhi was on his first holiday. Let me just finish it.
I want to interrupt you.
Okay, go.
You're trying to make a distinction between knowing about brass tacks and the way it was implemented. How can the Defence Minister not know how something's being implemented?
Well, that is where the betrayal took place. I was about to tell you when you so rudely interrupted me that Rajiv Gandhi had gone on a visit to Lakshadweep and extended it into the first holiday of his Prime Ministership. On his return, I was involved in a program that I'd organized for him in Bangalore. We came back. The following morning, I happened to come into his office for something else, and he said to me, Mani, do you know that Roon has almost taken us to war with Pakistan? And Natwar says that he'd been told something similar. So while army maneuvers were certainly acceptable, this manner of running the show when he's not present was a betrayal.
There's something...
And let me finish the story, because that's not in Natwar's book. He doesn't know it, but it'll be in my autobiography. That Rajiv decided there must be a restoration of trust with Ziaul Haq. He sought my advice on that. I gave him 3 options. It'll take too long to mention them all. The one he picked was the one I didn't think was going to happen. He rang Zia and asked him whether he could come across to Delhi for lunch.
All right.
And Zia turned up, and that was what diffused the totally unnecessary tension provoked by these 2 irresponsible people, and I say so with responsibility, Arun Singh and General Sundarji.
I thank you for the additional information which you've given me, which is how you helped Rajiv actually sort out the problem, and he took your advice and invited Ziaul Haq to Delhi for lunch. I'm very grateful for that, because that's new. But I want to go back to what you were talking earlier about Arun Singh being able to, as defense minister, or the army chief, as army chief, do something without the prime minister knowing. They may have betrayed him by exceeding their authority, but they only did it because they must have assumed this is a prime minister who will never find out.
No.
They didn't value him.
No.
They didn't give him credit for being hands-on. They thought he could be fooled, and they tried to do it.
I'm sorry, you're quite wrong. Arun Singh had lost Rajiv Gandhi's confidence in September 1985, when he was expelled from PMO and sent to an obscure assignment where he could play with his toy soldiers in the Ministry of Defense. And in General Sundarji, he found a man about whom I said later that every time you appoint an army chief, and I'm aware that I'm talking to the son of one, I said we must give them an IQ test. And if they pass it, we shouldn't make them army chief. Sundarji, was just being too clever by half. Arun Singh was not being loyal to his own man, and the minute Rajiv discovered this, he stopped it. He was a responsible defense minister.
The problem is that Rajiv, and this is the other interpretation, wasn't discerning enough to know what was happening under him, on his ministry, by his Minister of State.
It was not happening while he was in Delhi.
He was taken for a ride.
It was not happening while he was in Delhi.
Doesn't matter whether
while
he's in Delhi or not.
While he was leaping into a lagoon, these 2 people betrayed him.
Have confirmed
the minute he found his betrayal, he threw them out.
You've confirmed that the Prime Minister was taken for a ride by the Army Chief and the Minister of State. That's not very happy for the Prime Minister. It shows that he is gullible. It shows he's gullible.
It also shows the minute he knew he was being taken for a ride, he stopped these jokers from doing what they did. And I think Natwar, being fully much more au fait with this than I am, should have brought all this out.
Does, in your eyes, Rajiv emerge with credit from this episode, or does he emerge with question marks about his capacity?
Tremendous credit. That was when he showed that he was Jawaharlal Nehru's grandson.
My last question to you. Many people, as they read what Natwar Singh has revealed about IPKF, the whole Sri Lanka, what I call misadventure, as well as brass tacks, will come to the conclusion that Rajiv Gandhi was a less than competent Prime Minister, at times an inept Prime Minister.
They will come to this conclusion because they don't realize that readers like you are both incompetent and inept.
But
there is this kind of
How do you defend
twisting.
Rajiv by criticizing me? It's a very strange
I'll
defense.
tell you why. Because you kept on trying to use these 2 words with Natwar. Natwar kept denying them, but you wanted your story, and then your ticker used to say what you said and kept on not saying what he was saying. I think that was a very, very unfair interview. It was not worthy of Karan Thapar, my friend.
Now, let me end by putting this to you. The impression that emerges from Natwar Singh's book of Rajiv Gandhi, that he was a good man, a likable human being. He had enormous qualities as an individual that were admirable. But as a Prime Minister, he was naive. As a politician, he was inept.
You asked him that question. He denied that that's what he said. You then
I didn't say that he said it. I said that's the impression that emerges. I didn't say he said it. I said that's the impression that emerges, and that's what I'm saying to you. This is the impression that emerges.
I think if you took Winston Churchill, if you took Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I took Abraham Lincoln, you could find that there were errors that they made. But that does not change them from being great presidents or great prime ministers.
Is Rajiv a great Prime Minister?
I think Rajiv was next to Jawaharlal Nehru, the best Prime Minister.
Ahead of his mother?
I would put him because he never ran an emergency.
Let's hope Sonia Gandhi
And
is
that's the
watching.
funny thing.
You will be
This is
back
the-
in her favor before you can say, hey, presto.
No. She is not such a capricious person.
A pleasure talking to you, Manishankar.
Thank you, Karan.